It's April 24th, 2023. It's my mother's actual birthday, the flower that I arrived from. And on this date, they had on CBS, it's the E81. Apparently on this one, the British are going after King Charles, in his area, talks of slavery. Now, I'm watching from New York, and I see things very differently. I mean, again, my background and study was in germ theory and in some other areas. So that looks very much, there's a book, a publication that the Times magazine people put out. They laid out some photos of what things look like. So this germ theory is a good example of what my studies are on like a nano abstract artistic rendering and complete engagement within the college setting. So that's one. But it seems the same people who are perpetuating this, then there's a few things that are really, there's germ theory, there's chemical weapons, there's petropolitics, and then there's information warfare through some kind of disinformation, and not really any way of protecting oneself while I'm here. And then I have this, what looks very much to me like taken as almost either a hostage or a political prisoner by whatever's going on here for the last 44 years, is what it, like when I do a retro analysis, I've been held amongst RH positive as an RH sensitive something else who happens to have an endangered amount of whatever left on the, so that's why I always say, I'm like, it's more like an endangered species of flower or biologic at this point. I came out, I spoke about as much as her. I mean, I really speak very little. I know that nobody really cares what I have to say, and that holding your tongue is worth more in certain situations than using it. However, it has done me no good up to this point to stay this silent. So in order to paint my own portrait back, what would I like to look like at this point? I'd like to look very feminine and in a relationship with an RH negative who can hold his own. That's what I would like. Where am I at? I'm tagging along with some really hard to explain black stiletto actually imprinted on his hand in a tattoo that I call an insult to my intelligence just when I'm reporting at the safety zone of a red cross, a red stiletto. So that in the local area after other things have happened to me, like as if getting stuck by needles in public and then not knowing when you come to what happened and whatever, as if that wasn't enough. I've also had advanced technological warfare used against my person. A movie that comes to mind, Lewis just brought up the other day, is Ichabod Crane. And not in the gruesome accounts of, like anyone who's studied doctors knows, on the apron when he walks out of the first necropsy. the patient was already dead in pathology. So like that's like one of those plot holes that the professionals know to call out in I really had studies in whatever. So there's that. But Ichabod Crane in a technological decapitation of one's intellectual property, almost like an Alzheimer's, but the light switch goes on and off, and in my case, sometimes it's advanced technological, hypothetically, so I think, and sometimes it's something. I mean, like again, do I say robber barons of the local area that are like they've withheld the ability to marry correctly and to afford my own stay here. On top of which there's other things with children arriving. So I don't really know how to get back. I mean, I still have human rights. I'm still in this staging era of New York City where if I theorize that I have an Uncle Eric, an Uncle Duke, and an Uncle Mark, my plea would be directly to them for safety, for mercy, and for keeping my communications amongst ourselves at this point in order to do whatever it is that they do best to protect an innocent woman who was just a flower, supposedly under their protection somehow as good, decent men, and men of the highest efficacy. And that's it. That's all. Like, I mean, I don't know what more to say. But what I can see is in the same Times magazine that they print over here, Life magazine, which looks very much like the Times magazine. They said that there's some war to end all wars, which was something chemical warfare. And I'm like, I don't see that level. I've seen it in reference in some movie, The Rock. But then there's the robber barons and the Petro kids and how they've really told this story. Like on this side of the water, they're really mad at people that look like King Charles saying slavery and the white man's the oppressor and all this stuff. Yet I see a lot of Petro politic games going on, and I see their children with smiles on their face bringing up and enhancing dangerous, like sports washing and in casinos and gambling, like really getting into these areas of difficult to speak about while I'm being held at such a level where everything I needed as a woman was taken from me in my season of, I mean, who do I ask on this planet for help at this point? And how do I see things? I spoke yesterday. We went to the Bazaar, Tri-County Flea Market. Interestingly enough, Jason 1976, with a wedding band. That's what the crazy donkey could afford. So that right there, he's RH positive. I'm RH sensitive and RH negative. That was a problem nobody was speaking of and nobody brought up. So here is this Life and Millennia, and we went to this unique bazaar yesterday, and in that building, the people who look over that at commissions, if they were watching on the surveillance camera, I was speaking directly to the person in charge of that staging area for proper linguistics and sense of direction, which I greatly appreciated. I mean, the fact that he took time to speak to me really meant a lot, because I feel like I'm so lost in the symbolism of whatever's going on here. And so much time has been wasted. So he says, I asked him about the symbol on his back, and he said to me something about, I had asked him what his thoughts were on, like, George Washington his head is on the silver coin. And he's like, right, but, some people say these things are, and I'm like, but if that is our national security at its best, why would you allow anybody to erode that symbolic, almost higher ground if there's a battle going on? Why would you ever let anybody interfere or change that? That's what I don't understand. And so he was, I'm not, again, like, he was more, I don't know, do you say warrior type? But, I don't know. So, I was just curious. Again, I have a GOD on file, so there's some conversation I needed to clean up with the bourgeoisie, or the public, or the, I don't know, is that the people of the local area that look over these lands, just to make sure that I am informing them of certain things I've noticed that perhaps they want to speak up and protect before changes happen, which I don't want more changes than the tails changing on the back was frightening enough. It's a bird. It is certainly a bird. And I've had Ichabod Crane issues going on with intellectual property rights. And it's, whatever it is, it's a sign of something that's really hard and sensitive to speak about. So, they make mention safely, or so I thought safely, about the Petro in a different year, speaking on Rockefeller only, if that's the agreement around here. But what I noticed is, I'm going to go from the See the BS to the almost, I mean, now they're talking about it as climate change, but it really looks almost like Robert Barron's got first seat at researching just how much damage to all of the residents are in these city studies, for which I don't have access to the same level of, like, I don't know where they publish these results. I mean, like, things that I don't even know I need to be, and there's no, like, group. I mean, I found one yesterday by accident, going to the bazaar, looking at a unique whatever for a book, and then there's this other New York State commissioned thing that's there that the blacksmith wanted to go check out. And I just happened to be tag along at that point. Seems to be an ongoing whatever in whatever. So I'm going to pause this for a second, and I'm going to pull up the communication and how they're prefacing it. And it seems to be the same kids who are loud about slavery and that disinformation are the same kids who got the funding to do the analysis of the chemical weapons ongoing thing. I mean, they call it petro, fuel, gasoline, but it's still this whatever. And somebody else put on the news about this nitrous oxide or nitrogen level in the air that they're also measuring for. Here they call it carbon. And I've had in my own personal body an issue with what I call ammonia, which is chemicals, N3, which means it has a nitrogenous base. One of the locals he did a Google search and it came up with amino acids. Again, when the amino acids break down, I've been having trouble with my legs and my joints. I've gotten some of my balance back, but my eyesight is having trouble at this point. There's a lot of, and the bottoms of my feet are turning yellow. So now in this chemical warfare I only have partials to go on. They call things chlorine and mustard gas. I don't know. I know what the end results are, and I'm not, like, the hospitals are not, the ones that I go to anyway, are not willing to have an honest conversation with me and help me. I don't know if the doctors are just trained by the disinformation engine that's going on in this area of New York. Again, I don't really know how to bring this up to the three uncles, Uncle Eric, Uncle Duke, and Uncle Mark, in a theory, just like germ is a theory and everything else. Yesterday there was a storyteller that came to the Gilded Room, and she did an exercise for all of the children of all different prior robber barons, let's call it, although some of them call themselves different things depending on whatever. So, but they all have a hand in what happened before they arrived. Their parents did, their grandparents did, and here we are. And I'm the one who's hurt in this entire scenario, having it unfold and develop this way, for which I did not anticipate nor whatever. So, so there's that going on. I'm going to pause this for a second. So this is CBS Mornings E81, which I think they taped. They say it's Studio 46 in New York City. Again, I had to go past their studio, didn't know where that was, to get to the Intrepid the day I took my son to the museum.
That was my mom's name. I love that where you said that Chiron said Peggy's perfect kick, and you see that little kick. Nice. First step. I like that. Yes, very nice. Very nice, Coach Dion. We're going to begin this hour with a story that you'll see only on CBS Mornings, and we love when that happens. It's an effort to uncover one of the darkest and most troubling secrets of Britain's upper class. King Charles has approved an inquiry into the royal family's ties to slavery, a history he has been pressured to apologize for. Holly Williams spoke with one of the king's cousins, leading a separate effort to show how other prominent families were connected to the slave trade. She joins us now from Buckingham Palace. Holly, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gail. There are several...
So my question is slavery, like, on the morality scale? I mean, I'm not really posing this to anybody of any authority that should be answering this if it gets into the wrong hands, but, like, slavery or the robber barons prospering over holding innocent children in quarters where chemical weapons are being developed and prospered from, but yet the profits of that system are being withheld from some of the residents that they're holding in these containment areas while looking like it's innocent business as usual, but trapping children like myself, who's now a full-grown adult and doesn't know exactly. I mean, is that a worse offense, or is this nonsensical theory of slavery before anybody actually was here? All they have is some pictures and some papers that say it happened. I've got real eyewitness accounts of Chemical Weapon Depot and how they're working climate change in the local area.
British families leading this campaign, shining a light on this country's deep involvement in slavery. But one family with historical connections to slavery that is not taking part is the family that lives here inside Buckingham Palace. So this is 18th century.
This is 18th century. The house is 18th
The
century.
Earl of Harewood is a British aristocrat, and Harewood House is his ancestral home, now open to the public. It makes Downton Abbey look like a shack. But it was all built with the profits of slavery.
How do you feel about this being part of your family history?
I'm ashamed that people behaved in that way, and that my ancestors behaved in that way. We're accountable for that legacy today. All portraits of various ancestors.
The Earl's forebears enriched themselves with sugar plantations in Jamaica and Barbados, in which enslaved Africans toiled. When Britain finally outlawed slavery in its colonies in 1834, like other slave owners, they were compensated by the government, around $3 million in today's money.
And the slaves themselves who had been freed, were they compensated?
The slaves who were freed received nothing. And what you can see down there...
Now the Earls behind the campaign calling for other families that benefited from slavery to come clean and use their wealth to benefit the descendants of those who were trafficked. He calls it reparative justice.
It's something that people have been very much in denial about, swept it under the carpet, pretended it hadn't happened.
Why?
Guilt, shame, it's very difficult to put a finger on. I don't understand it.
The dehumanization, you can't compensate for that, but we can all work together toward doing what we can. So, you know, we may not...
Joe Williams is a descendant of British-owned slaves in Jamaica. He now leads historical tours exposing how this country profited from slavery.
But many mansions were built from this profit.
So he's on British land. I just want to make sure. I mean, isn't that treason? I mean, again, he's on British land and he's actively promoting disinformation or hate speech about the current family and management of the island he is calling home. I want to make sure I have the facts correct, because when I watch this, that's what I see. And then I go from this story to New York modern day story, same time frame that this man is saying these things over there. And I'm wondering, why is there so much hatred for people like myself? And why would the current area ever overlook like me, or why would I have trouble finding an RH negative when I'm RH sensitive? And I know the youth I grew up around knew I was RH sensitive when I was in the Glen. I'm just confused where the handoff and the introduction of the correct male suitor or proper, like, where did humans go wrong in this very simple calculation?
From slavery.
Yes.
British slave traders trafficked nearly 3.5 million Africans to the Americas.
Those are paintings and depictions of what it must have looked like, but not confirmable in modern day. Here's what I can confirm. It's called and it's a DOT, which is Department of Transportation. So it's DOT, which right now I've seen photos of who is in charge or for administration in this area. And according to whatever, it looks more like a muse, M-U-S-E, as opposed to whatever in Greek or Roman myths. Those were the words that she used at a professional. So this is on the DOT or DOT with David Schechter. Again, that's why I spell out, even though it's pronounced God, just like this is pronounced dot. When you do DOT, Department of Transportation, there's a GOD somewhere, and I am not going to pronounce that like this for sure.
So we've got a lot of carbon dioxide. Now let's talk about where it's coming from.
So I think this next step would be pretty cool. This company has figured out how to visualize carbon dioxide.
Hello! Davida Herzl is the CEO of a...
So she's the CEO. She is this year's robber baron. She's taking money and it's being funneled through her, totally bypassing people like myself in order to do this study and to do whatever else, while at the same time, there's some sports washing and there's some other things going on in making things look legit, I suppose, at some level. Again, I'm not real clear, but it's just looking like I want to make sure I got my facts lined up.
A climate. In Oakland, her company operates a fleet of cars outfitted with tubes and sensors that analyze the air for 14 kinds of pollution. One of them is carbon dioxide, which floats straight up into the atmosphere and can stay there for hundreds of years.
So in this theory of chemically diluted theories for protecting criminal rings, possibly, they call it carbon dioxide. Where does the nitrogen and the nitrous oxide come in? I'm just curious because, again, when I don't know who's in charge of chemical weapons warfare and the pollutants, the particulates, the granulates, the respiratory, and then who they're dealing with. It seems really important. Again, I'm just a small, one of a rare kind in entire global geopolitics for on the petro scale. I'm a very small number, so I thought it would have been really neat, nifty, and easy when it came time just to have, rather than having to do this really messy whatever has gone on at taking prisoners.
To deal with climate change, to deal with air pollution, you really have to understand where it's coming from, and you have to take local measurements to do that.
As we're driving, how many measurements are happening right now?
Right now, every single second, we're taking a measurement. Off of that, yeah, the air is getting sampled. We're moving through the streets. That enables us to pinpoint the precise location of those measurements.
There are a lot of ways that carbon dioxide gets into the air, but according to the EPA, the #1 source of carbon emissions is transportation at 27%.
You can look out the window.
I know this seems like a great job, really innocent, but it's in this robber baron cycle that's just not getting any better. And it's completely bypassing, there's corporate standards somewhere where they have to have equality and diversity and all this other stuff. So I've heard. So they just keep opening the door and diluting their power. And then now all of a sudden I'm watching the ratios shift and I'm like, wait a minute, but they're funneling money, employment, and research and opportunities to just one particular sector of the population. And I'm like, they're not even up to their own requirements for federal and corporate standards. So, I mean, how is this working and who's investigating that?
There's, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 trucks just in front of us right now.
Diesel trucks.
Diesel trucks. And what you're looking at here, that's the CO2 coming off of these trucks.
What she's showing me is a visualization of carbon dioxide on the streets of Oakland.
So this is their model. To me, it looks like a chemical weapons like facility, potentially, in theory, where I'm not in Oakland, California, but I'm near an Oakland lake, and there's city schematics in this area that look like this, and I've had no opportunity to even get into anything political. Like, I mean, there's been no, even at voting, at like what's coming out in the city, what's the planning board, and there's been nothing. It's just been silent. And I'm just existing here, but not well. My health is now deteriorating, and I can't get out. I can't get away. I'm just trapped here amongst people that I don't know and that seem to have some kind of cycle of benefit and curiosity study. And there's not that same level of opportunity for myself. None that I've found or none that I've been offered. But the Ichabod Crane, where they mess with the balance through, like, again, it's advanced magnetics, but it throws the body chemistry off. It's throwing the balance off. The kinesthetics are off. And then it's a different level of science being interfered with, almost at like an advanced script of programming, which is even more frightening. But that's happened. And I think they quote it here as something called a Havana syndrome. I don't know if that's protected by something else. Again, I'm not quite sure. But it's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361. Oh, and yesterday I went to change. I have having trouble changing my phone over between carrier service and then where things are. Some things came up I was curious about, but again, I don't even know where to postulate that with or whom to speak to on this.